Welcome to the Higher Ed Retire Podcast with your host, Greg Shepard. Greg is a fee-only financial advisor who specializes in helping those in higher education to take control of their retirement. Since 2001, Greg has helped employees all over the country make the most of their retirement plans.
Hey there, folks. Greg Shepard here, your humble host of Higher Ed Retire Podcast. For those of you not familiar with the podcast, I specialize in helping folks all over the country get the most out of that oftentimes confusing, pesky higher ed retirement plans. So we do try to focus more, I try to focus more on those TIAA accounts and the nuances therein. This episode is going to be a little different in the sense that I am going to, every once in a while, take time in this episode to answer your questions. Now, there are a lot of questions thrown my way, right? So I'm just going to nitpick and pick the most popular ones to share with you, because I feel the more information, the more scenarios, the more situations I see folks go through, I'm going to know, I do know for a fact, a lot of you out there are going through the same thing. So we're trying to learn, right? The more information you have, the more armed you are to make an educated decision. And before I get going, I always forget to recite these disclosures that I've been told will keep the attorneys at bay when I do these episodes. So here we go. Investment advisory services offered by me, Greg Shepard, as an investment advisor rep of S&A Financial Services, Inc., which is a registered investment advisor. Okay, so let's get going. Like I said, I'm going to recite 4 questions. I'm not sure how many I have here, 3 or 4, and maybe talk about a couple things that piggyback off these questions. So let's just shoot from the hip and see how this goes. So the first question I've received via email the last, I'd say, month, more times than I've read in the past is, well, the question is, how are you, being me, Greg Shepard, linked to TIAA? Very good question. I get that quite often. So, I do not work for TIAA. I never have, never will. It's a fabulous place full of fabulous people. But I have an independent RIA here in the Kansas City area. RIA is Registered Investment Advisor. I, as an advisor, am part of their advisor network. Okay, so I'm afforded, certain access. I'm going to say that. Afforded certain access that other advisors are not. So therefore, it gives me a little bit of a leg up, advantage, if you will, over other folks in my industry when it comes to TIA. There's not many folks that do what I do because it's so darn confusing. I tell you what, folks in my industry, advisors that is, whenever I tell them what I do, they want nothing of it. Okay, and you all out there know what I'm talking about because it gets so confusing. So how am I linked to TIA? I'm the only way I'm linked to them is through the advisor network. So I have my own team, not my personal own team, but I have a phone number I call that's a dedicated team over at TIA, and I have an institutional website that I can access that shows me all kinds of information for all my clients and all kinds of fun stuff. So there is that. Next question. Okay, it's not really a question, but you know the old adage, paralysis by analysis? I coined that phrase for this part of the questioning because a lot of you will ask the same question just in different words, or will state things but just in different words. So what I'm getting at is a lot of you have reached out to me, and I can just tell, you're very intelligent, a lot more smarter, as indicated by the way I speak there, a lot smarter than I am, okay, when it comes to all facets of life, right? But for the life of you, you can't figure out the nuances, the tricks, the trades of TIAA, mainly traditional. So what you've done in various ways, you've attended webinars, you've attended in-person seminars, you've talked to TIA, you've talked to folks, maybe colleagues, maybe folks in my industry, and the more information you get, the more confused you are. Okay, you go down the rabbit hole, the Pandora's box of all these strategies, and then you kind of humble yourself, and you'll realize that you don't know what you don't know, and that just makes you more confused, more frustrated. And then what happens? Human nature, paralysis by analysis, and you do nothing. Okay, which is very common. I see that each and every day for years on end, folks get confused, but the more information they gather, the more complicated they feel it is, which it is, and they're afraid to kind of pull that trigger on whatever strategy you're trying to implement. Therefore, they do nothing. Okay, paralysis by analysis. So we're trying to alleviate that. That's a big part of what this podcast is, trying to alleviate that condition, that paralysis by analysis. So by all means, contact me, contact TIAA, which I'm going to elaborate a little bit on here if that would help. But, have someone in your corner that knows what they're talking about. That's just my opinion. Take it for what it's worth. If you do want to contact me, I failed to give you contact information at the beginning, but the easiest way to do so is via email, greg@shepardfinancial.com, greg@shepard financial.com. I'll give you my phone number. That doesn't seem to be a very popular mode of communication anymore, but it is 913-521-2381. Moving on to the third question or statement, if you will. Folks out there, and again, in various ways, various words, the question is, how do I maximize my TIAA Traditional? And I actually wrote notes down for this episode. That kind of parlays into the next one. So let me give you, how do I want to word this? This opens up, again, Pandora's box, going down the rabbit hole. There are many ways one can maximize my TIAA Traditional. What I assume folks are talking about is, how do I increase the rate for which my TIAA Traditional is getting me, okay? Again, I'm not going to be able to answer this question on this episode because there's so many different ways you can do that. So maybe I'll answer it like this. Yes, more times than not, you're going to be able to increase that rate of TIAA Traditional given elevated rates we're seeing now, which is in November of 2023. We're getting ready to spill into 2024, okay? Liquid contracts, illiquid contracts, there's various strategies you can implement to do this. A lot easier on the liquid side. Okay, again, this kind of parlays into the next, I'll call it topic, but so let me get into the next topic because it does correlate to this question. Next thing I'm going to share with you is something I've talked about before, but the reason I bring it up is I saw it or I heard it happen again, just in a different manner. So let me preface this. Let me explain. This individual trying to increase the TIAA Traditional rate for which he was getting. Okay, I can't recall exactly what he was getting, 3 point something, maybe 4. What he did, okay, I'm stumbling over my words here, but what he was trying to do is that 120-day reinvestment rule. If you're not familiar with that, it's very simple. Theoretically, you can take from a liquid contract, take money out of the TIAA Traditional, basically sell it, place it in money market. That's my opinion. I guess we call it advice. You don't have to put it in money market, but I think that makes the most sense. And then 121 days afterwards, reintroduce those monies back into the TIAA Traditional, therefore realizing that new rate at that point. Okay, typically you're going to want to do this if your TIAA Traditional rate for legacy money is a little lower. Okay, it's very difficult to project the future, but given high rates, Fed funds rates, I'm going to leave it at that, okay? I'm not going to get my tongue tied there. So what this individual did is he had a liquid contract, ex-employer. He took money out of his traditional. Instead of placing it in money market inside the contract, he rolled it over to an IRA. And then what he tried to do is take those monies, reintroduce it into an illiquid contract, unbeknownst to him, because that illiquid contract, TIAA Traditional, is paying 7%. So he wanted to go from like 3.8 to 7. That sounds fantastic. The only problem is he couldn't do it. So now his we'll call it mistake, wasn't that big of a deal because he did take those TIAA Traditionals. It could have been a lot worse. He did take those TIAA Traditional monies, roll it over to an IRA. So that IRA is liquid. He can extract from that. He could also invest that money. But nonetheless, the strategy he was trying to implement, which creates a lot of complexities with all the paperwork involved and frustration on his end, it was dead at start. Okay, it was a non-starter. That's what I was looking for because he couldn't even do it from the get-go. All right, so I see this time and time again where like I'll talk about a strategy or you'll get wind of a strategy and a lot of folks will try to implement it, and halfway down the road after things have gone, you'll do an irrevocable move, which is just that, irrevocable, and you got a problem. Okay, now like I said, in this case, it wasn't a huge issue, but I've seen it other issues where it has backed up on folks. Okay, that's enough on that. But that's one of those ways, going back to that third question, how to maximize a TIAA Traditional, one of the more popular ways is that 120-day, what I call reinvestment rule. If you don't know what that is, I do have an episode on that, and do some research on your own. Call TIAA or maybe just Google it. I've never done that, but maybe you can find that in the Google bot there on your internet device. And lastly, again, this isn't a question. This is something I've noticed the last month or so. I do these episodes on a monthly basis. I was going to pick it up every 2 weeks, but, life gets in the way, right? I get pretty busy owning this company here. But lastly, frustration with TIAA. I just coined it as such. So a lot of you, again, in different words, letting me know that you contacted me because you were on hold for 50 minutes, on hold for 40 minutes. You didn't get a direct answer. You were more confused after hanging up with TIAA than you were before. Now, I'll reiterate the fact that TIAA, I've worked with them for 20 years. They are fantastic people. They're very knowledgeable when you call them, but they work for TIAA. Goes without saying, right? Makes sense. So they're going to tell you things maybe told to them by Big Brother. Okay, maybe you can read between the lines there, what I'm getting at. Great example. This side note here, okay, tangent. I actually called TIAA with a client on the line. She had $85 in an old, we transferred money out of a contract, it was like 15 years ago. And she still had $85 sitting in a contract. It was an illiquid contract. $85, okay? I keep emphasizing that for a reason. And talked to my advisor team, and they told me, hey, the easiest way to do this is get the client on the line, call the retail number, and they can do this over the phone and have that money sent to her, in our case, a rollover IRA at Schwab. She doesn't want to take this as income because it creates tax liability and tax forms and all that stuff. It's only $85. So we did that. We called the retail number, and I told her before we get going, I have no idea what we're walking into here. I usually don't deal with the retail folks. Let's just see what happens. 45 minutes later, we finally got it accomplished, but I had to, not argue is not the right word, discuss with the rep that the client was not interested in any type of lifetime income annuity option for the $85 that was sitting in her retirement plan. Yes, you heard me correct. It was a younger person, I could tell. I don't even know if you can do a lifetime income annuity option on $85, but nonetheless, that's kind of important to note because that is usually their go-to when they're talking about, when you or them are talking about strategies. That's of interest to TIAA for various reasons I won't get into now. Great people, very knowledgeable, but let's remember who their boss is, okay? So the frustration with TIAA, I get it. I hear about it all the time. For whatever, there's various reasons as to why people are frustrated with TIAA, and it boils down to not lack of, how do I word this? It's lack of knowledge. You don't know what you don't know, and it's not your fault at all. There might be some folks out there that are just reluctant to educate themselves at all, but a lot of folks, most of the folks I talk to, have done a great job of educating themselves. But again, it's, how do I word this? TIAA, when you call them on the line, they are not your fiduciary advisor, okay? They don't claim to be. Therefore, they're not going to tell you the strategy that's in your best interest. They are going to give you a laundry list of strategies that you have choices that you can choose from. However, there are actually some strategies not shown in that retirement income illustrator, nor are verbally given to you when you call them on the, 888 number or 800 number, whatever it is. Therefore, the old adage again, you don't know what you don't know. How do you know about a strategy if you don't know to ask them, because they're not going to tell you about it unless you ask. All right? Great example is a 2.5% haircut for GRAs. Okay? I doubt they're going to tell you about that if you call in about the GRA contract, because guess what? If you initiated that 2.5% haircut strategy, that's money leaving TIAA. Now, it's a drop in the bucket, granted. TIAA is a pretty big company, but nonetheless, that's still assets going out. They would rather keep assets in, and I don't blame them, by initiating lifetime income annuity options, which may or may not be in your best interest. Okay? So that's what I mean, little long in the tooth there when it comes to frustration with TIAA. Okay, so what did we accomplish today? We got how am I linked to TIAA? Answered that one. Paralysis by analysis. How to maximize TIAA Traditional. Oh, the person that attempted the 120-day rule failed at that. And frustration with TIAA. If you fall in this category, plural, categories, you are not alone. I talk to you kind of folks just about every day. Feel free to contact me with your frustration. Hey, vent to me. That's a lot of what I do for a living, okay? Especially when it comes to TIAA. Feel free to contact me. Again, email greg@shepardfinancial.com. That's greg@shepard financial.com. I should have a Calendly link somewhere in all the stuff that I do. So feel free to jump on my calendar that way as well. Folks, this is Greg Shepard, Higher Ed Retire, telling you to take control of your retirement today.
Thanks for listening to the Higher Ed Retire podcast. Just because this episode is over doesn't mean you can't continue your retirement journey. Please visit www.higheredretire.com to see how you can work with Greg or to simply ask him a question. Thanks again.
S&A Financial Services is a registered investment advisor. Information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Be sure to first consult with a qualified financial advisor and/or tax professional before implementing any strategy discussed herein. Past performance is not indicative of future performance.